Hello, I'm Jim Riley, and welcome to All the Right Connections. My guest this morning, James Reynolds, President, Mid-Hudson Cablevision.
Jim.
Dave Finger, give me your title.
Chief Engineer.
Chief Engineer. I like that. I'm with the big guys today. This is good. James, I hate to start on something that has been a challenge for the company, but let's talk about the recent disaster we had up in Athens. We had a fire that was bad for the people involved with the business there, but it also impacted your service. Tell us a little bit about that event.
Well, Jim, as I've told everybody, the day began like any other day, and we usually have a technical call at 7:45 in the morning, and to review the day's work and priorities and try to, set the focus for the day. But we never got to that call because I got a call from Dave prior to that saying that there was something going on in Columbia County and that our Chief Technical Officer, Steve Renaud, was already en route to our hub in Columbia County to try to decide what's going on. He said that he would keep me posted, and I looked at the local news a few minutes later after that call, and they report a fire in Athens, New York. And so I'm thinking, that's not a good situation, but I really didn't put the two together at all. Right. And then I get a call from Steve, our Chief Technical Officer, saying that we've got service in parts of the system, but not in other parts, and he's concerned about, where this problem is originating. And we're troubleshooting already at 7:30 in the morning,
right.
And then a few 20 minutes later, I get a call from Dave, and he's at the fire in Athens, and a portion of our cable fiber was destroyed. So that's how the day began.
Right, and that, Dave. Take us through that, because the first part of this is analyzing what the problem is, correct?
Right.
So tell us a little bit about that side of it.
Well, my morning began by waking up and having my wife tell me that the TV wasn't working. So that's a little bit of a click goes off in your head. My
right.
TV
Something's going on.
Something's going on. How big? Is it just me? So I went in a little early and got as far as Catskill and realized something was going on. I called Steve Renaud. He had the same problem, tells us something's bigger than just one.
Right, because his side is the data service.
It is.
Yours is really kind of the television
and
side.
And neither one worked.
Right.
So we decided he would go to the Hudson Hub site. We have major hub sites in communities.
Right.
He would go to the Hudson Hub site, I would go to the Catskill one, and we would call each other from there.
And compare notes as to what you're finding.
Right, and what we found was that the two sites were not talking to each other.
Right.
It looked like it was probably the river crossing. And so we started driving. Actually, there's two ways to troubleshoot the fiber. The most obvious is to get in your car or your truck and drive and look.
And see if
usually that is the
or,
first way to do it.
Right.
If you can't find anything that way, we have what we call an optical time domain reflectometer, OTDR.
That's technical, Jim.
I like that. That was really. Say it one more time, just so we get it clear.
The acronym or the full word?
No, the whole word.
Optical time domain reflectometer.
Okay, and that does.
If we can't physically see a problem in a fiber, it will find it.
Right.
So
what it does, and I'm not a technical guy,
right.
it sends a light signal down the fiber until it hits the break.
Right.
And then it comes back and tells you how far it is, so
right
you know where the break is.
Right.
Got it.
Right.
Okay. And it's good to have both views. One is that technical side, the other is the practical thing. What does it do?
But we found this through the practical means. I drove from Catskill up Route 385 to Athens and got into the village of Athens and found a fireman in the road with a flag telling me I had to stop.
Right.
And that's how we found it.
Okay. Let's go back to river crossing. Some people may not be aware of what that situation is, James.
Well, we years ago, we partnered with NYNEX, which is now Verizon.
Right.
Both companies wanted to connect the two counties with fiber. And prior to that, NYNEX had a problem where a barge going down the Hudson River was dragging anchor for some reason snared their cable and disrupted phone service. This is back in, I think,
60s.
Yeah, 70s. So they wanted to establish a new underwater fiber connection between the two counties.
Right.
We partnered with them. We had it installed, and that's how we connect the two counties at this point. But I think the thing that was pretty remarkable to me about this experience that we had is that it was more or less a perfect storm, because when the fire burnt the fiber over in Athens, the fiber comes out from the river, and one part of it goes up and goes aerial.
Right.
Another part goes underground to Albany.
Right.
We do have geographically diverse routes to Albany in the event that there's a fiber break.
Right.
And we of course have the system broken up into, as Dave said, different hub locations in Greene and Columbia County, so that we're not really exposed to an event that can take down everything.
Right.
However, this was unusual because not only did it knock out service to a good portion of Columbia County, it took our phones out at our office.
Right.
We
So you
didn't
can't
have-
communicate with customers.
All of
to
our
really get this
customers,
done.
start at 7:30 or even earlier, are calling saying, "What's up? I don't have service." We couldn't communicate. So I think that is really the story that I want to focus on, because the group of employees at Mid-Hudson responded to an event. It's cards that you're dealt, and you have to decide what to do with them. We quickly made decisions that we were going to use social media, Facebook. We were going to call the radio station, call the
Right.
newspaper, find ways to get the word out there. And amazingly, Facebook, the 911 service in Columbia County, contacted us, and they decided to post a message on Facebook saying that there's a fire that has disrupted service, that we have crews on site ready to respond, and it is affecting Verizon, it's affecting Central Hudson, and we're ready to go as soon as we're allowed access.
Right.
But that really helped calm things so that people knew that we were on it. But the way that we reacted to this, I was very amazed, because from the time we knew we had a problem till the time that we started bringing service back up was, I think, 3 or 4 hours.
Right.
And
That's remarkable, given the scope of this disaster.
well, we had our construction crews, before the fire was out, were prepping both ends of the fiber that had been burnt, had to be prepped, because and Dave can explain this better than I can. With fiber optic cable, fiber is like a tiny little, it's almost the size of a human hair,
Right.
of glass. And each one of those fibers, there's about 120 or 30 or 40 in this bundle. Each one of them had to be spliced. And it's a
Right.
fusion splicer where it melts the glass. So it's a very precise and complicated procedure. We had our technicians on site with a splicing trailer. We had our construction crew there standing by, and they went right to work. And it's amazing that they were able to restore things so quickly.
Well, I think it's particularly important because you've always focused on one of your main goals in this business is to provide service. And nothing's more important when you have a disaster like this, so it must have been particularly satisfying to you to get this done so quickly.
Well, I think that you want to say that you have full redundancy in the event that there's an outage, and we work very hard at that. But we know this is not a perfect world,
Right.
and this is a very unusual situation, because that building was in the location, and that fire was able to take that series of cables down, fiber optic
Right.
cable, and caused this disruption, which also connected to the central office in Catskill where the phones
Right,
are.
exactly.
I should also point out that we also immediately, when we knew that our phones in the office were out, we rerouted our traffic and we converted from T1s, which is the standard telephone network,
Right.
to operate our PBX. We rerouted to VoIP, which is the internet-based phone service
Right.
we deliver.
Which is what I use.
So
at
we
home.
were actually able to get our phones back up and be able to talk to people within, I'd say, an hour or so of the
Right.
event, so that we weren't dark the entire time of the
Right.
whole disaster, as you're calling it.
Well, I mean, it can't be described as anything else. Dave, take us through that technical side and getting things back. You had everybody on site. Just tell us a little bit about what that process was like for you and the men out there.
I got on site, excuse me, I got on site about 7:15 and spoke to the fire chief who would not allow us to start work. The fire was still burning.
Right. Safety first.
Safety first.
Right.
So I got on the cell phone and called our construction manager, told him I needed a crew there with the fiber, explained to him what was going on and where I thought maybe he might want to come into town from to get started.
Right.
And also called our fiber splicing crew to get a bucket truck or bucket trucks in there with a fiber trailer and a splicer and to get on site and be ready.
Right. Because I've seen them across the street from my house on occasion with the trailer and all equipment. It's terribly important, Dave, to have a vision for this. This is something you think about on an ongoing basis, don't you? I mean, you don't wait to figure something out when it happens. You kind of have this process set up, don't you?
You do. You need a plan A, and then you need a plan B, and then you need a plan C. And plan A, in this case, was redundancy, which fell apart, for lack of a better term.
Right.
So plan B was fix it as quickly as we can.
Right. And I think, James, that's something that you've always been very concerned about with the company, is that this is going to happen. It doesn't matter how well you plan, how strong the system is. These perfect storms, we'll call them, are going to happen. So that's something you've been concerned about on an ongoing basis, haven't you?
Right, and I think what we do after each event, I mean, after Hurricane Irene, where we had guys working in all parts of the system trying to restore service, and we talk about triage process, where we want to work to get the maximum number of customers on at the earliest possible time.
You have to prioritize, which is what triage is.
And you know, using this latest episode as an example, I mean, you have a fiber bundle, and it's 120 or 30 fibers, and so our guys are there, and they took the time to figure out which fibers were hot and would provide the service to the greatest number of people at the earliest possible time. And they started splicing those first, because we had to splice them all.
Right.
But they figured out which ones were the most important and started working on those quickly. Since this event, you know, we've had discussions, and we have ongoing discussions to figure out how could we do it better next time.
Right.
And I'm very gratified that we had service back up and running before Verizon.
Yeah,
It's a
it
huge
just shows.
company.
Yeah, it just shows that your idea of being prepared on an ongoing basis is critically important to providing service.
Yeah, and even down to simple things like, we had a number of people in our office that, you know, when we figured out that the phones weren't working and we had to get the messages out, we put it up on Facebook and the radio station, whatnot. Then individual staff members at the office started using their cell phones. We generated a list of all of our commercial customers for fiber, and we started calling. You know, I called the hospital.
Right.
We called the 911 center. We called all of the places where we knew that this was going to be a critical issue for them, and just let them know we're on it. We're going to fix it at the earliest possible time, and I think we accomplished that. But we're going to study how this unraveled and how we responded, and see if we can do it better next time.
Right. And your cruise day, we're talking about Irene just happening and now
Right.
this fire. Your people really seem to be ahead of the curve and staying on top of how to get out there the fastest and get things going. Is that under your direction?
Yes.
Yeah.
It is.
I mean, that's really, you have to kind of anticipate things going wrong, but they're getting more highly skilled as we go through these events, aren't they?
Jim, we have one of the best fiber crews I've ever seen.
Yeah.
We do.
It's amazing. James, when you look at this kind of an event, I think debriefing is probably what we're talking about as you go through each one of these events. When your crews were out with Irene, they must have been up against some very difficult situations as well, weren't they?
They were. I mean, we were actually engaged in other work than restoring our service because our guys were on site. We were in communication with the supervisors in the towns, hardest hit, and for the entire week, the media made such an event out of that storm, Irene, and what could happen. And most of the focus was on New York City, what was going to happen down there. And we thought we were going to get some remnants of the storm, but we didn't expect the impact.
You actually get the brunt of the storm.
As it turned, and then it just sat there and dumped water. But we were talking about how are we going to respond. What are we going to? How are we going to stage this to be ready? We bought additional generators. We did all sorts of planning. But even with those plans, what you have to do is you have to react when you know what's going on.
Exactly.
And a couple years ago, we had an ice storm, which had similar impacts where it brought down major lines. We lost power all over the place. And of course, we really can't restore things until the power lines are back up. But we did everything we could as quickly as we could. And to me, that's really the responsibility that we have because we're delivering services that people count on. And we all take that very seriously.
It isn't just entertainment. It's important service that needs to be addressed right away.
That's right.
Yeah. Dave, you want to say thanks to your troops?
I do. We got the best crew out there. The construction crew, Tom Colangelo and all his guys, and our senior techs, Dave Clapp, Mike Carreri, and Vince Rendazzo, and some of the junior guys that are training with them. I want to say thank you to all you guys.
Yeah, very special. James, again, the hallmark of your company and the service you provide is service to the customer. You must be very pleased about that.
Well, I have said already, thanks to all personnel.
Yeah.
Everyone in their own way played a part in this, and I think that it sends a message out to the communities that we serve. We've had, for the most part, generally, very positive feedback from customers, not only on Facebook but in person. Very understanding, knowing that there was really nothing. This was not something you could plan for.
Right. You
couldn't defend against it, and so when it occurred, the response that happened was very quick and purposeful, and we got things back up and running. And now we're talking about what if.
Right.
What if something else happens similar to this? How can we have a better plan next time? And luckily we've got people that can respond the way they do.
Well, I think
we're very lucky.
Well, you've got a heck of a team at Mid-Hudson Cable, both inside the office and out with the crews, and you have reason to be justifiably proud of them. James, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Jim.
We appreciate it. Dave Finger, thanks so much. And we'll be back after a few messages with our community segment.
We know our customers depend on us in the evening, on the weekends, on holidays, and we do know that the services that we provide are very important in the lives of our customers, and we take that very seriously. We want to deliver the highest quality of service 24/7.
Welcome back. My guest for this segment of the program is Bill Hollenbeck. How are you?
Very good, sir.
and you are the new mayor of Hudson.
I am.
Well, let's get a little background on you. You're a local person, so tell us about your background, how you kind of wound up being the mayor.
Well, I was born and raised here in the city of Hudson, and I went to the Hudson School District.
Blue Hawk. You're a Blue Hawk.
I am.
Yeah.
I am. And during my time, of course, growing up in the 70s, you had families such as my mother and father who certainly went out of their way to make sure that I was respectful and always instilled in me to give back to the community as much as the community has given to me.
Right.
So at a young age in high school, I decided that law enforcement was going to be my career choice. And it's funny because 30 years ago, civil service, if you wanted to raise a family here in the city of Hudson and stay around the area, civil service was the way to go, unless you were going to a big four-year college.
Right.
In that respect, however, here we are 30 years later, and really, if you want to stay around the area, civil service is a perfect choice. So, those of you who are looking to get into law enforcement or civil service jobs, certainly it's a great profession.
It still looks like a really good vehicle.
Yes.
Yeah.
So in '87, I was able to take civil service tests. I was hired by the City of Hudson Police Department, graduated Albany Police Academy, came back, worked 8.5 years for the City of Hudson Police Department. In 1995, I took a lateral transfer, transferring to the Columbia County Sheriff's Office, where I was a deputy sheriff for approximately 14 years. Now, during my time as a deputy sheriff, I was able to achieve being a DARE instructor, a drug abuse resistance education instructor, for the last 6 to 7 years, which allowed me to work in 4 schools in the county: Ichabod, Germantown, Taconic, and New Lebanon. When I retired in 2007, I chose to work at the Hudson City School District as a safety officer.
Right.
And I was there for 5 years, and one of the things that I always wanted to do, dating back to my high school days, was after finishing a law enforcement career, was to get into politics.
Right. So you kind of had that vision all along.
I did, and it's kind of ironic that I mentioned to a good friend of mine years ago at the age of 13 and 14 that once I did my law enforcement career that maybe someday I would end up mayor of Hudson, because I had aspirations of being involved in politics.
Interesting. All right, let's move you right into the mayor now. I got a whole list. We're going to go through a whole list for you, Bill. We want to get as much mileage out of it as we can once we have you here.
Sure.
Also, I think just to remind folks, this is really a nice way for the community at large to get a chance to meet you. I know you've been out meeting people and doing as much as you can to make that contact, but this is a nice way to do it. So I'm glad you're here today for this. Yep. Okay, what are the changes that you've seen in this city over the last 20 years or so?
I've seen a lot of changes. I grew up in the 70s, again, primarily my youth years, and the 80s, where there were a lot of mom and pop stores on the business district in the city of Hudson. When I started my law enforcement career in '87, we had an issue with the drug crack coming into the area.
Unfortunately, across the nation,
and it was really an epidemic at that particular stage, and a lot of businesses were closing on Warren Street at the time. And I said to myself, how are these businesses going to be filled, and where does Hudson go in the future with the closing of these stores? And certainly we know now that we've had an influx of individuals who have come up and have chosen the city of Hudson to begin their businesses,
New York City.
to begin their business, and certainly we have a business district that's thriving, unbelievably right now.
It's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful.
And that's a movement that certainly we want to continue. But at the same time, we look at what the population was back in 1987, around that time, where you were talking about 9,500 to 10,000 people in the city of Hudson or more. And now we have 6,700 people based on census figures. And when you look at some of the industry that we had that has closed, and some of the individuals that unfortunately have had to seek jobs and employment in other places, certainly the city of Hudson, feels the brunt of that.
Yes.
Because if in the developing aspect of the city of Hudson also, if you were to take a aerial shot of the city of Hudson 30 years ago, and you look at the development that we've had and the new businesses that have created business here, you're probably not looking at much change in that regard.
Right.
Now, from a waterfront perspective and a revitalization of our waterfront, removing of the petroleum tanks that,
Right.
to Mayor Scalera's credit and
Right.
And those in his cabinet, certainly we've made great strides in that area. But if you look what Greenport, the surrounding town, has certainly accomplished in a 10-year span with the development of Lowe's and the businesses out in
All along
Greenport
Route 9 has been very
and
successful.
the
yes.
hotel and the other businesses that are being considered and actually built right now on Route 66. I think we need to be mindful of that movement, along with providing additional substance to the business district and those small,
Right.
the antique dealers and
Right.
the businesses we have on
Yeah,
Orange.
so you want to build on that and
Absolutely.
and make the
Expand
city
on
grow
that,
way,
and
yeah.
consider and be aggressive in trying to find businesses that want to come to the city of Hudson. I had a individual who has worked in the area of development say to me one time that the biggest sales pitch you can make for businesses is the fact that he said Hudson has something a lot of communities don't have. In one aspect, it's unfortunate that we have buildings that are vacant,
That's
but
right.
we have buildings that can be occupied.
Right.
He said to go out and aggressively seek business, and that's a great selling point for businesses
Resources.
that don't have to
Sure.
spend the money to actually build a facility.
Right.
We have turnkey buildings that are available for
Right. And that's a big plus.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
It is. And we just have to be mindful of the fact that we need to be out looking for these businesses and attracting these businesses
Great.
to come to the
All right,
city.
I'm going through more on my list.
Very good.
All right, as you take a little break there. How's your transition been?
Extremely busy, but it's been great so far. One of the couple of the issues when transitioning into City Hall, and I have to thank the outgoing administration because they've certainly been forthcoming and helpful in
Good,
regards to that
good.
transition.
That's always good to hear.
Yeah, I really took my time in deciding who should be in different positions in regards to commissioners, in regards to mayor aide. I selected and appointed Mayor Aide Gene Shetsky, who is a lifelong resident of the city of Hudson,
Right.
32-year law enforcement retiree also, but just really knows the city of Hudson as well as I think I
Which
do.
is terribly important to have.
It certainly
Yeah,
is, certainly is. I'm somebody that feels that departments run themselves in regards to, the Department of Public Works,
Right.
City of Hudson Police Department, Cemetery, and those commissioners that are in place are doing a fantastic job. But there is some housekeeping and things that a mayor has to pick up right away and be cognizant about. And then there are those projects that are left over from the previous
Right.
administration that have to be
Carried forward, yeah.
carried forward, and new ideas and discussions. At one point, the first couple of weeks of being the mayor, I think I was having 5 to 6 one-hour meetings a day,
Yeah.
one right after the other, on all different subjects and subject matters. So it's extremely busy. One of the things that outgoing Mayor Rick Scalera once said was that it's very difficult to get out and meet the public because of the fact that City Hall is as staffed as it's going to be,
Right.
And certainly could be staffed more in order to accomplish some of the workload that we have at City Hall. One of the things I've been able to do since becoming mayor is to allow myself time on Fridays through scheduling appropriate scheduling, at least 4 or 5 hours to get out into the business district and the community. I've been to about 20 businesses in the business district.
Right.
Those individuals I didn't know before going to their business, introducing myself, having a chat about what was happening in the business
What their
district.
goals are, how it's fitting
Absolutely.
with the city. Yeah.
Senior Center at the Boys and Girls Club right now. I've gone over there, had some discussions with the seniors. Providence Hall, I've had a couple residents who have had some concerns, and it's been nice to be able to say, hey, you know what, as mayor, this is what I said I was going to do, and certainly this is exactly what I'm doing in regards to personally going
Right.
to individuals and hearing their concerns about what's
Right,
what's
because
going
they don't
on.
always have that ability to get to City Hall.
Absolutely.
So if you can get out, that's a very good idea.
Absolutely.
Great.
And in the community too, and I'd like to say this too, it's nice that, having an open door policy, and in a community that's, 2.4 square miles, when you call City Hall, a lot of times I'm answering the phone also.
Right,
So,
yeah.
I don't know if Mayor Jennings is doing that up in Albany, but,
Probably not. But
yeah.
But I think that is something that the people in the city of Hudson really need to have. They can't have this thing, well, the mayor will get back to you in a month. The mayor will get back to you in
Correct.
3 weeks. They really need to be able to deal with the mayor because issues that come up to them are vitally important. It may be something you have to deal with in the flow of your work, but they need attention right away.
Absolutely.
Good.
And that's a good point, and I think my law enforcement background helps in dealing with some of those calls in regards to getting back to people in a timely fashion, because
Right.
you're absolutely right. Regardless of what other people feel about the priority of what that call is, each individual, it's important to.
It's terribly important. to them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, you got such a list here, and this, I'm sure that's how the task is going at hand. But here's one that I don't understand, only because I don't deal in government. Just working under the 2% tax cap. What does that refer to?
Well, obviously the state is basically stating that and has provided legislation in regards to staying under the 2% tax cap. So in order to stay within that 2% tax cap and budgetarily, the city of Hudson has to consider a lot of options in regards to accomplishing that. One of the difficult things in doing that is the fact that, while the state says that, we require you to stay now under a 2% tax cap, there are still mandates that the state says, we're mandating you to do this,
You
and
have
they're
to do it.
unfunded mandates,
Right.
which is difficult for municipalities to accomplish both.
Yes.
Over here, you have an unfunded mandate or mandates that, you have no option in not doing, but
Right.
no funding to do. And that has to be balanced with staying under the 2% tax cap. So it's difficult for municipalities to accomplish this, but
Right.
we're already in discussions with staying underneath the 2% tax cap.
Right.
One of the things, one of the options the state has left open for municipalities is that the legislative body of any municipality, in this case our common council, with a vote of 60% or more, can override the 2% tax cap. It's an option they have, and the state has allowed for that option. But in the same respect, staying under the 2% tax cap, the city of Hudson has a lot to consider. We provide a lot of services to our residents.
That's right.
We have a lot of departments that, are for the most part respond within a very reasonable amount of time, whether it's garbage pickup, police services, or any other services. And we have to be mindful of not putting our residents, in a position
Right.
where they're going to be affected while trying to stay underneath the 2% tax.
You'll be dealing with this on an ongoing
no
basis,
question.
that's for sure.
No
Okay, as we go through this, we talked a little bit about this business district expansion and other business district considerations. So I think we've covered it pretty well. Let's look at a need
I will
for
say this, though, if I can add one
Sure,
thing,
yeah,
not to interrupt
yeah.
you. One thing I did leave out is that, primarily the assigned business district has been between 7th and 3rd Street.
On Warren?
On Warren Street.
Right.
Certainly, this administration, my administration, is looking to expand that from Worth Avenue to Front Street to include the other businesses that exist, primarily for the fact that there are a lot of functions that occur in the city of Hudson with the Pride Parade and the Winter Walk and Flag Day, and it's just apparent to those that come into the city of Hudson for those events that the business district is within the street, the streets of 7th to 3rd Street. So I think it's important that we're not just blocking off that area for these functions, and that we're extending it beyond to encompass the whole business
and
district.
also make them part of the family. I
Absolutely.
think it's terribly important. Nobody likes to be
Absolutely.
feeling that they're outside and they're not in the same family. I think that's critically
You're
important.
absolutely right. Even up around the park and up on Columbia Street, where Vassilos and Molinos, and up on 8th Street, even that area.
That's easy to forget if you don't really think about including them in the mix. I think it's terribly important.
And there's buildings that are there for the taking, for development and for
See,
businesses.
that's the other part. Again, you have to look at it to see that it's there and
Sure.
available. I think that's important.
Sure.
Great,
Absolutely.
thanks.
You're welcome.
Let's police and court. That's a kind of a combined issue.
Well, right now, the 427 Warren Street, which is the old telephone company, is where the police department is. Most residents are aware of that. And within the police department and the adjacent building, I believe it's 424 is the court. OCA, the Office of the Court Administration, for the last 6 or 7 years, are basically saying that, and it's another mandate to provide another building or an expanded area for the court. So the City of Hudson has been in talks with the Office of Court Administration and the Hudson Police Department and City Hall in providing a new police and or court, or both.
Right.
It's certainly time for a building suitable for the advanced police considerations that exist now versus when they moved into the telephone company. Right now we are in discussion with potential developers for a police and a court combined. We're in discussion with individuals who own property throughout the city of Hudson for the purpose of occupying buildings, be it by lease for an amount of time, or purchasing property in the near future for a police and a court.
Good. It's something I think you're right. You can really see the need for. At the same time, I think it's all part of that development, redevelopment, and just upgrading of all the facilities within the city.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Good. All right. How about contract negotiations with the police department?
We are certainly the City Hall's perspective on contract negotiations with any department is that our departments have quality service for our residents.
Right.
Certainly the City of Hudson now is beginning their negotiations, our negotiations with the City of Hudson Police Department. And I believe in a week from now will be the first sit down. First meeting we'll have with the City of Hudson Police Department. I think from both sides and the basic discussions that I've had with individuals, certainly the City of Hudson wants to provide a fair contract to the men and women of the Hudson Police Department who risk their lives every day.
Absolutely.
And at the same time, we need to have one eye on taxpayers' dollars and be cognizant of the fact that even through the tumultuous times, economic times that, arguably since the Great Depression that we've all just gone through, the City of Hudson, to the credit of the previous administration, has done fairly well, but we still need to be cognizant of the fact that, there's only so much at this particular stage that, there's an area we can go and that we can't go beyond. Right. And I'm looking forward to those discussions in the upcoming contract negotiations.
Well, here's the plus that the City of Hudson has at this point. The mayor is an experienced law enforcement officer from the City of Hudson. I think you couldn't
and
get
the
a
mayor's
better,
aide.
I think that will be a big plus for both sides, don't you?
Absolutely.
I really do.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm going to skip one. I'm
Sure.
going to skip one if you don't mind,
That's
because I
fine.
want to wrap this up with
Very
you. 'Cause
good.
I want to make sure people still
appreciate you
stay
having me
engaged
on,
with
too.
us. Oh, it's just great to be with you, because we haven't seen each other in a while, so
That's
this
correct.
is kind of good.
Correct.
You're looking at ways to streamline government and expenses associated with the services of the city.
Well, this discussion has come up over the last few years as a county supervisor, as you know I was over the last 2 years. And in the city of Hudson, the government structure hasn't changed in a very long time. We have right now 2 representative aldermen, alderwomen from each ward, 5 wards in the city of Hudson, 1 supervisor from each ward in the city of Hudson, which represents Hudson on the county level. And I think the discussion is moving in the direction of whether or not it's feasible, whether or not we need to have 2 aldermen representing each ward versus 1, and being able to eliminate 5 alderman positions. And this discussion isn't new. This has been discussed
I'm sure
over the
it's
last
been
few
discussed
years.
over, yeah.
And how many actual representatives we need from each ward, supervisor representatives representing Hudson on the county level. So in that respect, we are discussing whether or not the possibility exists to streamline that. And the flip side of the discussion is some of the terms that exist for representatives of government in the city of Hudson. Almost all the terms in the city of Hudson are 2-year terms, including on the county level. For example, I found it very difficult as a supervisor, even though I was able to accomplish providing and instituting, with the help of other supervisors, a vehicle policy within 2 years. You can understand how difficult it is to become a mayor or a common council president or an alderman or woman and only have 2 years to really accomplish some of the important things that need to be accomplished in the city of Hudson.
Requires a little more time.
Certainly, I mean, after 13 months, you're campaigning again to if you choose to run for any of those positions. So, I believe that through the discussion that I've had with others, every 10 years it comes up as a public referendum, or can come up as a public referendum, to potentially streamline government in the city of Hudson, and to consider the extension
the process
of the terms
of how that works.
From a 2 to 4 year term for mayor, common council president, potentially supervisors. The argument with supervisors is, do we need 5 for each ward? Do we, is 1 sufficient for the entire city, similar to 1 being sufficient for the towns of, say, Kinderhook and Livingston?
And something that really needs to be looked at, obviously.
Yeah.
Good.
So,
good. Now, because I want to wrap things up so people still like us and like what we're doing here.
Sure.
Any last thoughts for the folks out there?
Well, I would reiterate what I've said over the last 8 months prior to taking office, that I don't believe the city of Hudson has the mentality of the us and them anymore. I think we're all Hudsonians.
Right.
We need to work together, regardless of whether or not you were born here or have lived here for 6 months. Hudson is changing rapidly, I think, for the better.
Yes.
We have a revitalized waterfront, which I think can coexist with the Parks and Recreation there, can coexist with small business, restaurants, stores. We have the passing of the LWRP, which is, I think, fantastic in regards to zoning in that area.
Right.
And I would like the residents of the city of Hudson to know that they're going to get 110% from City Hall, and they're going to get 110% from City Hall from as long as I'm here as mayor.
Knowing you as well as I do, I know that's a guarantee.
Thank you, sir.
Bill, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Bill Hollenbeck, Mayor of the City of Hudson. You also want to thank James Reynolds, President of Mid-Hudson Cablevision, and Dave Finger, Chief Engineer for Mid-Hudson Cablevision, for joining us on All the Right Connections. We look forward to seeing you real soon.